early number theory. So in this third section we are going to see a little bit about the history of number theory. I should not say the history of number theory because that is an extremely vast subject in itself, but this is just merely some words from the author on early number theory. So the author says the theory of numbers is one of the oldest branches of mathematics. Understandably, because the concept of numbers itself is almost as old as languages. An enthusiast, by stretching a point here and there, could extend its roots back to a surprisingly remote date. Although it seems probable that the Greeks were largely indebted to the Babylonians and the ancient Egyptians for a core of information about the properties of the natural numbers, the first rudiments of an actual theory are generally credited to Pythagoras and his disciples. So it's believed that the Greeks came to know about the natural numbers, I mean not the natural numbers themselves, but rather properties of the natural numbers from Babylonians and ancient Egyptians. But a systematic study of these ideas that was done by the Greeks themselves, and more specifically by Pythagoras and his disciples, his followers. Our knowledge of the life of Pythagoras is scanty and little can be said with any certainty. That is natural because these people lived so far back in time. The further you go back in time, the less clear things are and the less information you have about anything or anyone. According to the best estimates, he was born between 580 and 562 BC. On the Aegean island of Samos. It seems that he studied not only in Egypt but even may have extended his journeys as far east as Babylonia. Nowadays, if we want to learn about something, we can use the YouTube among many other places on the internet. Of course, we also travel, we go to famous universities, get ourselves enrolled in nice courses, we learn about things from the great people that we have over there. But you can almost know about those things, almost I say, because if we could learn everything on the internet, then the universities, schools, these things would have vanished. That's not the case, but I'm just simply saying that we can learn a fair bit about almost everything by sitting at home. But back in those days, the only way to learn about things was to travel extensively, meeting those people who knew about some subject in person. So Pythagoras also traveled and he studied not only in Egypt, but it is believed that he may have extended his journeys as far east as Babylonia. And when he came back, he wanted to open a school to teach the things that he learned. When Pythagoras reappeared after years of wandering, he sought out a favorable place for a school and settled upon Croton, a prosperous Greek settlement on the hill of the Italian boot. This school concentrated on 4 mathemata or subjects of study. Arithmetica, which is arithmetic in the sense of number theory rather than the art of calculating. Then harmonia, which is music, gematria, not geometrica, which of course is geometry, and astrologia, which is astronomy. This fourfold division of knowledge became known in the Middle Ages as the quadrivium. To which was added the trivium of logic, grammar, and rhetoric. These 7 liberal arts came to be looked upon as the necessary course of study for an educated person. Pythagoras divided those who attended his lectures into 2 groups, the probationers or the listeners, and the Pythagoreans. Probationers were of course the people who were enrolled at his school, and for a first few years, specifically 3 years, they were just supposed to sit there and listen to the master, listen to Pythagoras, what he has to say. After 3 years in the first class, a listener could be initiated into the second class, and the listener would then become a Pythagorean, to whom were confided the main discoveries of the school. Now, this is one aspect of the ancient times that is different from what we have today. Nowadays, knowledge is freely available, almost freely available. But back in those days, it was believed that knowledge should be secret, should be kept secret. And the main discoveries of this school were revealed to only the Pythagoreans, and they were bound by an oath to not reveal these discoveries to the outside world. The Pythagoreans were a closely knit brotherhood, holding all worldly goods in common and bound by an oath not to reveal the founders' secrets. This secrecy was there everywhere in ancient world. That is because secret knowledge can be used to manipulate people. It sounds very bad, but this is the truth. Legend has it that a talkative Pythagorean was drowned in a shipwreck as the god's punishment for publicly boasting that he added the dodecahedron to the number of regular solids enumerated by Pythagoras. Okay. So this is only a legend, but it's believed that there was someone, a talkative Pythagorean, who boasted outside that he, Pythagoras found the regular solids. He added to that list the dodecahedron, the regular solid having 12 faces. And it's believed that gods punished him and he was killed in a shipwreck. For a time, see, this is the thing I was talking about. For a time, the autocratic Pythagoreans succeeded in dominating the local government in Croton. If you ask me how secret knowledge could be used to manipulate people, it's like this. In old times, people didn't know what eclipse was or eclipse is. So, the ancient priests, or in whatever religion or whatever culture, these people were there and unfortunately still are everywhere. They were actually astronomers also, and they discovered when eclipse would occur. So what they would do, they would tell the king that the sun will be engulfed by some monster in the sky. You have to do this and this, which usually is something that benefits the priest. Otherwise, the world will be plunged into darkness. And the king naturally would be suspicious at first. But then when the eclipse occurs, everyone will be afraid of the phenomenon because they don't know actually what is happening. So then the king or whoever the patron is of the priest, they would do as the priest says. And then the priest would say, okay, now the gods are appeased and now the eclipse will go away. Of course, they won't say eclipse, they will just say some monster has engulfed the sun. Okay, now release the sun. Then the sun again comes out. So by suppressing the actual knowledge of what an eclipse is or exactly why that is happening, you can manipulate people. So the same thing happened, and the Pythagoreans succeeded in dominating the local government in Croton for some time. But a popular revolt in 501 BC led to the murder of many of its prominent members. This could not have gone on forever. Eventually, people were tired of obeying what they were saying, and there was a revolt, and many Pythagoreans were murdered, and Pythagoras himself was killed shortly thereafter. Although the political influence of the Pythagoreans was thus destroyed, they continued to exist for at least 2 centuries more as a philosophical and mathematical society. To the end, they remained a secret order, publishing nothing, and with noble self-denial, ascribing all their discoveries to the master. Now, this secrecy was typical of those days. If you are a part of some secret order, some secret society, some brotherhood, then not only will you be expected to keep things secret and the discoveries of the society secret, but whatever you discover, even if you only discovered that thing, you will ascribe it to the master of the society or the head of the society, and you will not say that I discovered it, which is not just and which is, it should not be this way, but it was like that back then. The Pythagoreans believed that the key to an explanation of the universe lay in number and form, their general thesis being that everything is number. Now, everything is number, they believed in this literally. They believed that whatever we see around us, the physical objects themselves are also made of numbers only. If one investigates something very closely and minutely, ultimately one will find only numbers. And by number they meant, of course, the positive integers. For a rational understanding of nature, they considered it sufficient to analyze the properties of certain numbers. It sounds laughable nowadays. You want to find facts about the universe. Instead of actually going out and looking at the universe and seeing what is happening, you sit at home and think of numbers, and they believed that that was enough to know about everything by some mysterious what can I say? We will see, the author will say something about this, some sort of divine connection between nature and numbers. If you come to know about that connection, then you don't have to go outside and look at anything. In effect, you don't have to experiment, you don't have to do experiment. You just sit and think about theoretical things, and that will tell you everything about the universe. Unfortunately, many people believe in this nowadays also, and I was one of those people. I was. Now I am no longer. Okay, so where was I? They considered it sufficient to analyze the properties of certain numbers. Pythagoras himself, we are told, seems to have attached supreme importance to the study of arithmetic, which he advanced and took out of the realm of commercial utility. Yes, of course he did that, and we should be thankful for that. See, the concept of numbers, of course, was discovered out of necessity, a necessity to measure the size of a set, how many elements are there in a set. For various reasons you can understand, but that is commercial utility. Application of the concept of numbers outside, in the outside world. So he took numbers out of the realm of commercial utility and studied the numbers for philosophical or mystical or divine purposes. That is a different matter, but at least he took things outside of commercial utility and he studied them, he and his disciples. The Pythagorean doctrine is a curious mixture of cosmic philosophy and number mysticism, a sort of supernumerology that assigned to everything material or spiritual a definite integer. If you know if you know about something called numerology, you will know what the author is saying here. In numerology, everything material is assigned some number, and based on that assignment, the fate of that object or that person will be determined according to numerology. Among their writings, we find that the number 1 represented reason. They were not arbitrarily assigning this number 1 to reason. There is a reason for that, and the reason is this: for reason could produce only one consistent body of truth. 2 stood for man, 3 for woman, 4 was the Pythagorean symbol for justice. Why? Because 4 is the first number that is the product of equals. Why? 1 is also 1 times 1. 4 of course is 2 times 2. But anyway, we cannot reason with this logic. 5 was identified with marriage because 2 plus 3. Because it is formed by the union of 2 and 3, and so forth. All the even numbers after the first one, that means 4, 6, 8, etc., were capable of separation into other numbers. 4 is 2 plus 2, 6 is 3 plus 3, and so on. Hence, they were prolific and were considered feminine and earthly, and somewhat less highly regarded in general. Usual misogyny. In everything, there is an attempt to suppress women. Nowadays also we have that. Being a predominantly male society, the Pythagoreans classified the odd numbers after the first two as masculine and divine. Okay. Although these speculations about numbers as models of things appear frivolous today, not just frivolous, downright laughable, it must be borne in mind that the intellectuals of the classical Greek period were largely absorbed in philosophy, and that these same men, because they had such intellectual interests, were the very ones who were engaged in laying the foundations for mathematics as a system of thought. Yes, whatever their ultimate purpose was, mysticism, philosophy, cosmic philosophy, an attempt to know about the universe, no matter how laughable these attempts are or were, we should at least credit them for bringing numbers outside of commercial utility and thinking of them and their properties. To Pythagoras and his followers, mathematics was largely a means to an end, the end being philosophy. Only with the founding of the school of Alexandria, the famous school of Alexandria, do we enter a new phase in which the cultivation of mathematics was pursued for its own sake. We digress here to point out that mystical speculations about the more comedy is coming. Mystical speculations about the properties of numbers was not unique to the Pythagoreans. I mean, if some of you believe in numerology, I am not mocking you, okay? I am only saying that it's laughable and I don't believe in it, that's all. I don't mean to disrespect anyone or anyone's beliefs. One of the most absurd yet widespread forms that numerology took during the Middle Ages was a pseudoscience known as Gematria or arithmology. And this is the science which assigns, science means pseudoscience, by assigning numerical values to the letters of the alphabet in some order. Each name or word was given its own individual number. From the standpoint of Gematria, two words were considered equivalent if the numbers represented by their letters, when added together, gave the same sum. For example, if you say have the word bad, and you have assigned numbers to the English alphabet in their natural order, then B gets 2, A gets 1, D gets 4. If you add these things, you get 7. So the number bad is assigned the number 7, like that. And if two numbers, if two words are assigned to the same number, then Gematria considers those two words as equivalent. All this probably originated with the early Greeks, for whom the natural ordering of the alphabet provided a perfect way of recording numbers. Alpha stands for 1, beta for 2, and so forth. For example, the word amen in Greek is written like this: alpha, mu, eta, nu. And the letters have these values. In the natural ordering of the Greek alphabet, 1, 40, 8 and 50. The natural order in which the Greek letters appear: alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, like that. And the total of these numbers is 99. In many old editions of the Bible, the number 99 appears at the end of a prayer as a substitute for amen. The most famous number was 666, my number. The number of the beast mentioned in the book of Revelations. A favorite pastime among certain Catholic theologians during the Reformation was devising alphabet schemes in which 666 was shown to stand for the name of Martin Luther. What the hell? Thereby supporting their contention that he was the Antichrist. Luther replied in kind. He concocted a system in which 666 became the number assigned to the reigning Pope Leo X. Okay. This is my number, and I am not the Antichrist. I am just a student of mathematics, but still this is my number because I am Lucifer. It was in Alexandria, not Athens, that a science of numbers divorced from mystic philosophy first appeared. Okay, so that was the mysticism began to develop. For nearly 1,000 years, until its destruction by the Arabs in 641 AD, Alexandria stood at the cultural and commercial center of the Hellenistic world. After the fall of Alexandria, most of its scholars migrated to Constantinople. During the next 800 years, while formal learning in the West all but disappeared, this enclave at Constantinople preserved for us the mathematical works of the various Greek schools. So we should be thankful for that. The Arabs destroyed Alexandria. So the scholars fled to Constantinople, and with them they brought the works of the ancient Greeks. So it's from them that we know about what the Greeks did. The so-called Alexandrian Museum, a forerunner of the modern university, brought together the leading poets and scholars of the day. Adjacent to it, there was established an enormous library, the famous Library of Alexandria, reputed to hold over 700,000 volumes, hand-copied at its height. Of all the distinguished names connected with the museum, that of Euclid, founder of the School of Mathematics, is in a special class, of course. posterity has come to know him as the author of the Elements, the famous books that he wrote, the Elements. We mainly know him for, it's not a single book, but rather 13 books. The Elements is a compilation of much of the mathematical knowledge available at that time, organized into 13 parts or books as they are called. The name of Euclid is so often associated with geometry, Euclidean geometry, that we learn in schools, that we tend to forget that 3 of the books, 7, 8 and 9 are devoted totally to number theory. Euclid's Elements constitutes one of the great success stories of world literature. Scarcely any other book save the Bible has been more widely circulated or studied. Over 1,000 editions of it have appeared since the first printed version in 1482. 1,000 editions. The books that we follow, not to disrespect anyone, of course, barely get to 9th, 10th edition or 12th or 13th edition also, but 1,000 editions, imagine. And before its printing, manuscript copies dominated much of the teaching of mathematics in Western Europe. Unfortunately, no copy of the work has been found that actually dates from Euclid's own time. But then, how did we come to know of the Elements? The modern editions are descendants of a revision prepared by Theon of Alexandria, a commentator of the 4th century AD. So it's from his revision that we know about the Elements and about Euclid. Euclid's works. So that is just a very small history of number theory, early number theory. So just like the other sections, there are some exercises. Now you may wonder what sort of exercises this section may have. We will see in the next video on number theory, and then we will go back to our usual study of number theory. Okay, so that will be all for today in this video. If you want to write something, you can of course write in the comment section, or you can mail me also at the usual address. And if you should take all these things lightheartedly, okay? If someone feels offended by something that I said in this video, then I'm apologizing. So that's it for tonight. So until the next video, this is me, Lucifer, from a mathematical room. Have a nice night.